There are 3 ways to die as a wolf. The first is quick, a rogue's claws, a hunting accident, a challenge you can't win. Painful, yes, but merciful in its speed. The second is slow, age creeping through your bones, until one day your wolf simply doesn't wake up. Natural. Expected. The way it's supposed to be. But the third way? The third way is the cruelest. Bond rot. The slow poisoning that happens when your fated mate, the person the universe chose for you, looks you in the eye and severs the connection that was supposed to sustain you. It doesn't kill you quickly. It kills you by inches, day by day, making you watch as your body gives up on living because your soul can't forget what it lost. I was dying the third way when I found him. A wolf bleeding out in a river, as broken as I was, as desperate as I was. And in that moment, with death breathing down both our necks, I made a choice that changed everything. I chose to save him instead of letting us both fade into darkness. I chose to sing when I had every reason to be silent. And somehow, impossibly, that choice brought me back to life. My name is Lupe Pham, and this is the story of how 2 dying creatures saved each other. This is the story of how death became the beginning instead of the end, and how the bond that should have killed me gave me a kingdom instead. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, you need to understand what it means to have nothing left to lose. Chapter 1. The Rejection. The rejection ceremony took place on the night of the harvest moon, because of course it did. Everything terrible in my life seemed to happen under beautiful skies, as if the universe wanted to make sure the contrast was perfectly clear. I stood in the center of the pack circle, wearing the white dress my mother had sewn for me. She'd spent 3 months on it, stitching silver thread into the bodice, in patterns that were supposed to represent joy and new beginnings. The dress was meant for a mating ceremony. Instead, I was wearing it to my own execution, not a physical one. That would have been kinder. Terence Pope stood across from me. And even now, even knowing what was about to happen, my traitorous heart stuttered at the sight of him. He was everything an alpha should be. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes the color of aged whiskey. When he'd turned 18 3 months ago and felt the bond snap into place between us, I thought I was the luckiest Omega alive. I'd been so stupid. The bond is a mistake, Terence said, his voice carrying across the silent circle. 200 pack members watched us, their expressions ranging from pity to satisfaction. I've consulted with the pack elders, with healers from 3 territories, and they all agree sometimes the moon goddess makes errors in judgment. My mother's hand tightened on my father's arm. I could see her from the corner of my eye, could feel her desperate hope that this was all some kind of test, that Terence would suddenly laugh and say he was joking. He wasn't joking. Lupe Pham, he continued. And the formal use of my full name made something crack inside my chest. You are 20 years old and have never shifted. You present as Omega, but you have none of an Omega's gifts. You cannot soothe, cannot heal, cannot even sense the pack bond properly. And the healers have confirmed what we all suspected. He paused, and I knew what was coming. I'd known since the moment the pack healer had pulled me aside 2 weeks ago, since the moment she'd looked at me with those pitying eyes, and delivered the news that had shattered what was left of my already fragile world. You're barren, Terence said, and the word hung in the air like poison. An Omega who cannot bear children is not an Omega at all. You're a broken thing, Lupe. A mistake, and I will not tie myself and my bloodline to a mistake. The bond between us twisted like a knife in my gut. I could feel his revulsion through it, his shame at being connected to me. Fated mates were supposed to be equals, supposed to complement each other, but all I could feel from him was disgust. I, Terence Pope, alpha heir of the Clearwater Pack, formally reject you as my fated mate. I sever this bond by the authority of the moon goddess and the witness of this pack. The words hit like physical blows. The bond didn't break cleanly, it shattered, tearing through my chest like broken glass, like claws, like everything sharp and terrible in the world concentrated into a single point of agony. I didn't scream. I'd promised myself I wouldn't give them that. Instead, I stood there, as the pain radiated outward from my heart, as the bond that had connected me to Terence for 3 months dissolved into nothing, leaving only raw wounds behind. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't make a sound. Do you accept this rejection? The pack elder asked me, his voice gentle. At least someone had the decency to be kind about this public humiliation. I wanted to say no. I wanted to scream that you can't reject fate, that the moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, that he was a coward who cared more about bloodlines than about the person destiny had chosen for him. But what was the point? I accept, I whispered, and felt the bond finish breaking. The pain was so intense I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The world tilted sideways, and I realized I was on my knees in the dirt. My mother's beautiful white dress covered in dust and dead leaves. Terrence turned and walked away without looking back. The pack circle dissolved. People went back to their lives, their conversations, their comfortable certainty that the natural order had been restored. The weak Omega had been cast aside. The strong Alpha would find a proper mate. Everything was as it should be. My mother helped me to my feet. She didn't say anything. What could she say? That it would be okay? We both knew it wouldn't be. A rejected Omega rarely survived more than a year. The severed bond would eat away at me slowly, making me sick, making me weak, until eventually my body just gave up. Come home, she said quietly. Let me help you out of the dress. But I shook my head. I couldn't go home, couldn't face my father's disappointment, or my younger sister's frightened eyes, or the way my mother would hover around me like I was already dying. I need to be alone, I said. She started to protest, but then she saw something in my face that made her stop. She just nodded and let me go. I walked into the forest at the edge of our territory, not caring about boundaries or safety, or the fact that a broken Omega alone in the woods was practically begging to be attacked by rogues or wild animals. Maybe that would be better. Maybe a quick death was preferable to the slow one waiting for me. The forest was quiet except for the sound of my footsteps on fallen leaves. The harvest moon hung overhead, full and bright and beautiful, completely indifferent to my suffering. I walked until my feet hurt, until the lights of the pack houses disappeared behind me, until I reached the old river that marked the border between Clearwater territory and the unclaimed lands beyond. And then I did something I hadn't done since I was a child. I sang. My mother used to say I had a gift for it, back before I failed to shift, and everyone realized I was defective. She said my voice could make plants grow faster, could calm fussy babies, could draw animals out of hiding like I was some kind of fairy tale princess. But I'd stopped singing years ago, after it became clear that my voice was just another useless thing about me. What good was a pretty song when you couldn't shift? When you couldn't fulfill your purpose, as an Omega? When your own fated mate looked at you like you were trash? Now, though, alone in the forest with a severed bond rotting in my chest, I sang because it was the only thing I had left. I sang an old song my grandmother had taught me, a melody without words, just pure sound rising up from somewhere deep inside. It was a mourning song, a goodbye song, a song for things that were broken beyond repair. The forest seemed to hold its breath as my voice rose and fell, carrying all the pain I hadn't let myself express during the rejection ceremony. I sang about loneliness and shame, and the terrible weight of being unwanted by the one person who was supposed to want you most. I don't know how long I stood there singing to the uncaring moon and the silent trees. Long enough that my throat grew raw. Long enough that tears dried on my cheeks and new ones took their place. And then I heard it, a sound like breathing, harsh and labored, coming from the riverbank below. I should have run. Every survival instinct I had was screaming at me to get back to packlands, to safety, to anything other than investigating strange noises in the forest at night. But broken things don't fear death the way whole things do. I climbed down the steep riverbank, using tree roots for handholds, until I reached the rocky shore, where the water ran shallow and fast. That's when I saw him. The wolf was massive, easily twice the size of any pack wolf I'd ever seen, with fur so dark it looked black in the moonlight. He lay on his side in the shallows, and even from 10 feet away I could smell the blood. So much blood. It pooled around him, turning the river water rust red. His breathing was wet and rattling, the sound of punctured lungs struggling to keep working. As I got closer, I could see the wound's claw marks across his ribs, a massive bite on his shoulder, gashes along his flank that revealed bone. He was dying, and something about the way he looked at me, those strange gold eyes tracking my movement with an intelligence that was almost human, made me forget about running away. I forgot about being careful. I forgot about everything except the fact that this magnificent creature was suffering, and somehow, for reasons I couldn't explain, his pain felt worse than my own. "Hey," I said softly, taking a careful step closer. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf's lip curled, revealing teeth the size of my fingers. A warning growl rumbled in his chest. But it was weak, barely a threat. I should have been terrified. Instead, I knelt in the cold river water beside him and did the only thing I knew how to do. I sang, not the morning song this time, but something gentler, a lullaby my mother had sung to me when I was small, when the other children made fun of me for not shifting, when I needed to believe that being different didn't mean being broken. The wolf's growling stopped. His breathing, still labored and painful, seemed to slow slightly. Those gold eyes fixed on me with an intensity that should have been frightening but somehow wasn't. I placed my hand on his blood-soaked fur, feeling the too fast beat of his heart beneath my palm, and kept singing. I sang for him like I'd sung for myself, a song for broken things, for creatures suffering in the darkness, for the desperate hope that someone, somewhere, might hear and care. The wolf's eyes began to close. "No," I said, stopping mid-verse. "No, you have to stay awake. Stay with me." Those gold eyes opened again, focusing on me with what looked like effort. "That's it," I whispered. "Keep listening. I'll stay right here. You don't have to be alone." And as the harvest moon climbed higher in the sky, I sat beside a dying wolf in the river and sang every song I knew. Because even though fate had been cruel to me, I couldn't stand by and let another creature suffer alone in the dark. I didn't know yet that the dying wolf was no ordinary animal. I didn't know that my song was the first kindness he'd experienced in years. And I definitely didn't know that by the time the sun rose, everything I thought I understood about fate, about destiny, about who I was and what I was meant to be, would be shattered and remade into something I couldn't possibly imagine. All I knew was that his heartbeat under my hand was getting slower, and I sang faster, desperate and pleading, as if my voice alone could keep death away for just a little longer. Chapter 2. The King in the River. I didn't notice the other wolves until they were surrounding us. One moment I was singing, my hand on the dying wolf's side, feeling his heartbeat struggle beneath matted fur and blood. The next, I was aware of eyes in the darkness, dozens of them, glowing in various shades of gold and amber and green, forming a circle around the riverbank. My voice faltered and died. The massive black wolf beneath my hand made a sound not quite a growl, more like a warning rumble that I felt through my palm. His eyes, still fixed on me, seemed to be trying to communicate something urgent. Run, maybe, or stay still. I couldn't tell which. Well. The voice came from the darkness above the riverbank. "What do we have here?" A man emerged from the tree line, and even in my terrified state, I could sense the power radiating off him. Alpha. Strong one. He was older than Terrence, maybe in his early 30s, with silver streaking through his dark hair and scars crossing his bare chest. He wore only loose pants, like he'd shifted recently. Behind him, other figures appeared 6, 7, 8 wolves in human form, all of them radiating that same alpha energy that made my omega instincts scream at me to submit, to lower my eyes, to make myself small. But I was already small, already broken. What more could they take from me? "I asked you a question, little Omega." The scarred alpha descended the riverbank with casual grace, his eyes never leaving me. "What are you doing with our king?" "King?" I looked down at the dying wolf, confusion cutting through my fear. He was too large to be a normal pack wolf, yes, but a king? We didn't have kings. We had alphas, pack leaders, territory chiefs, but not kings. My voice came out rough from singing. I was just trying to help him. "He's hurt." "Hurt?" The alpha laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's one way to describe it. Our king challenged 3 rogue alphas who were terrorizing a human village at the border. He killed all 3, but not before they tore him apart. The other alphas moved closer, forming a tighter circle. I could feel their curiosity, their suspicion, and underneath it all fear. They were afraid of the wolf I was touching. "You should step away from him," the scarred alpha continued, his tone almost gentle now. "When a king wolf dies, the transfer of power can be explosive. You're too close. You'll be caught in the blast. He's not going to die." The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them, fierce and certain in a way that surprised even me. The scarred alpha raised an eyebrow. "You sound very sure of that." "He can't die," I said, and I didn't know where the conviction was coming from. Maybe it was the way the wolf's eyes had locked onto mine when I started singing. Maybe it was the fact that his heartbeat had stabilized slightly under my palm. Or maybe I was just so tired of death and rejection and loss that I refused to accept one more terrible thing in this terrible night. "I'm Jonathan Dyer," the scarred alpha said, watching me with an intensity that made me want to shrink back. "Beta to King Ronaldo Eaton of the Northern Territories. And you are?" "Lupe fam." My voice was steadier now, even though my heart was racing. "Clearwater Pack." Or I was. "I'm nothing now." Something flickered across Jonathan's face, understanding, maybe, or pity. "You've been rejected." It wasn't a question. He could probably smell it on me. The rot of a severed bond working its way through my system. "Tonight," I confirmed. "About 3 hours ago. And yet here you are, trying to save a dying king instead of mourning your own fate." Jonathan crouched at the edge of the water, keeping his distance but studying both me and the wolf with sharp eyes. "That's either very brave or very stupid." "Probably stupid," I admitted. But he was suffering. I couldn't just walk away. The wolf made another sound, and this time I understood it clearly. Not words, exactly, but intent. He wanted the other wolves to back off, to give us space, to let me continue. Jonathan must have understood it too, because he raised a hand and the other alphas took a step back. "You were singing," Jonathan said, "when we found you. That's what led us here." We heard a voice we didn't recognize, and the king's distress signals had gone quiet. "We thought," he trailed off, shaking his head. "We thought he was already dead and someone was mourning him. But you brought him back from the edge, didn't you?" I looked down at the wolf. His breathing was still labored, still painful, but definitely stronger than when I'd first found him. The bleeding had slowed too, though his wounds were still horrific. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I just sang. It's all I know how to do. An Omega gift," one of the other alphas said, a younger man with red hair and suspicious eyes. "But you said you're from Clearwater Pack. They don't let Omegas develop their gifts there, they suppress them, force them into traditional roles." "I don't have Omega gifts," I said tiredly. "This again. Always this. I can't shift, can't sense the pack bond properly, can't do any of the things Omegas are supposed to do. The singing is just singing. It doesn't mean anything." "It means something to him," Jonathan said quietly, nodding toward the wolf. "Look at him. He's not just alive, he's focused. I haven't seen him this aware since the fight ended." It was true. Those gold eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made something flutter in my chest. Not the bond. That was gone, shattered by Terrence's rejection. This was something else, something I didn't have a name for. "We need to get him back to the castle," Jonathan said, standing. "His wounds need proper healing. And we can't do it here. But there's a problem." "What problem?" "He won't shift back to human form. Hasn't shifted since the fight. We think the wounds are too severe. If he shifts now, he might not survive the transition. The pain alone could kill him." Jonathan's eyes locked onto mine, but he also can't heal properly in wolf form. "So we're stuck." I looked down at the massive black wolf, at the labored rise and fall of his chest. "What does that have to do with me?" "You calmed him," Jonathan said simply. "You brought him back from the edge of death with nothing but your voice. And right now, he's not letting any of us near him, but he's letting you touch him. He's letting you help." The implication was clear, but I still needed him to say it out loud. "You want me to come with you. I want you to save our king's life," Jonathan corrected. "I want you to keep singing to him. Keep him calm and focused while we transport him and while the healers work. I want you to do whatever it is you've been doing, because it's working, and we're running out of time." One of the other alphas stepped forward, a woman with blonde hair and a jagged scar across her jaw. "We can't trust some rejected Omega from Clearwater. She's probably a spy, sent to finish what the rogues started." "Does she look like a spy to you, Susie?" Jonathan asked dryly. "She's barely standing. She's dying herself. Any fool can smell the bond rot on her. She stumbled across our king by accident and helped him because that's who she is. Or because she wants to get close to him for her own purposes," Susie countered. "Rejected. Omegas are dangerous. They're unstable. Enough." Jonathan's voice carried alpha command, enough to make even Susie step back and lower her eyes. The king has made his choice. He wants her here. That's all that matters. I stared at the wolf. He wants me to come with you? He hasn't taken his eyes off you since we arrived, Jonathan said. And when Susie moved closer, he tried to stand, nearly tore his wounds open further, trying to position himself between you and her. So yes, little Omega, our king wants you to come with us. This was insane. I should refuse. I should go back to Clearwater territory, back to my parents' house, back to the slow death waiting for me there. Getting involved with strange wolves and injured kings and Northern Territory politics was not going to end well for someone like me. But when I looked down at those gold eyes, at the intelligence and desperation and something else I couldn't quite name, "Okay," I heard myself say. "I'll come. I'll help however I can." Relief flooded Jonathan's face. "Thank you. The castle is about 3 miles north. Can you walk that far?" I nodded, even though my legs were shaking and exhaustion was pulling at me like a weight. "Good. We'll carry the king, but you'll need to stay close. Keep talking to him, singing whatever works, and if he starts to fade..." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "If he starts to fade, you sing harder. Understood?" Understood. The next hour was a blur of movement and pain and desperate singing. 6 alphas carried the massive wolf between them, moving with supernatural speed through the forest while I half ran, half stumbled alongside them. My throat was raw, my voice cracking, but I kept singing every lullaby, every folk song, every scrap of melody I could remember, and the wolf kept his eyes on me the entire time. When we finally burst through the tree line and I saw the castle rising against the night sky, I almost stopped running in shock. It wasn't like the pack houses I was used to, rough wood and stone, practical and plain. This was something out of a fairy tale. All soaring towers and marble columns and windows that glowed with golden light. "Welcome to the Northern Court," Jonathan said, barely winded despite the run. "Home to the king of all wolves in this hemisphere. And as of tonight, you're home too, at least until our king decides otherwise." They carried the wolf through massive doors, down corridors lined with tapestries and sculptures, past other wolves who stopped and stared at the bleeding king and the ragged Omega girl singing to him. Finally, we reached a room, not the grand bedroom I was expecting, but something that looked almost medical. Clean white surfaces, bright lights, and a woman waiting with hands already glowing with healing magic. "Put him here," she commanded, and her voice carried the kind of authority that made even Jonathan jump to obey. They laid the wolf on a raised platform, and I moved with them, my hand still on his fur, my voice still carrying the melody even as my vision started to blur from exhaustion. "You need to rest," the healer said, her eyes flickering to me briefly before returning to the king's wounds. "You look half dead yourself." "She stays." Jonathan's voice was firm. "He wants her here." The healer looked like she wanted to argue, but then the wolf made that rumbling sound again, louder this time, more insistent. "Fine," the healer snapped. "But she stays out of my way, and if she collapses, someone else can deal with it. I'm busy keeping our king alive." I nodded, swaying on my feet, and kept singing. The healer's magic poured into the wolf's wounds, knitting flesh and bone with light that made me squint. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it looked agonizing. The wolf's body convulsed, his claws scraping against the platform, and those gold eyes rolled back in his head. "No," I whispered, pressing closer. "Stay with me. Listen to my voice. Just listen." And somehow, impossibly, he did. His eyes found mine again. And he held on through the healing that must have felt like being torn apart and remade. Held on through pain that would have killed a lesser wolf. Held on because I was singing and he was listening. And that was enough. When it was finally over, when the healer stepped back with sweat dripping down her face and declared him stable, I felt my legs give out. I hit the floor hard, but I barely felt it. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was those gold eyes, still watching me, still aware, still alive. Chapter 3, The First Night. I woke up in silk. That was my first thought, not where am I, or what happened, but simply, this is silk against my skin. Real silk, the kind I'd only ever seen in the Alpha family's homes, never touched, never worn. My second thought was that I hurt everywhere. The bond rot had spread while I was unconscious. I could feel it now. A poisonous ache that started in my chest, where Terrence had severed our connection and radiated outward like roots of decay. My muscles felt weak, my head pounded, and when I tried to sit up, the room spun sickeningly. Easy. A hand pressed gently on my shoulder, guiding me back down. You collapsed from exhaustion. The healers said you need at least another day of rest. I turned my head to find Jonathan Dyer sitting in a chair beside the bed, an enormous 4-poster bed with curtains the color of midnight. The room around us was massive, with vaulted ceilings and windows that showed the pre-dawn sky. Where am I? My voice came out as a croak. The guest wing, West Tower. Jonathan held out a glass of water, which I took gratefully. You've been asleep for about 6 hours. It's almost dawn. I drank, the cool water soothing my raw throat. The king. Is he alive, thanks to you? He shifted back to human form about 2 hours ago. The healers say he'll make a full recovery, though it'll take time. Jonathan's expression was unreadable. He's been asking about you. Something fluttered in my chest, not quite hope, not quite fear. Why? That's what I'd like to know. Jonathan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Lupe, I'm going to be direct with you because we don't have time for games. Do you understand what you did last night? I sang to him, kept him calm while the healer worked. You did more than that. You pulled him back from death itself. Our best healers have been trying to stabilize King Wolves after battle for centuries, and the survival rate is maybe 50%. You, a rejected Omega with no training, no bond to him. Nothing but your voice, you gave us 100%. He lived because you wouldn't let him die. I didn't know what to say to that. The king wants to see you, Jonathan continued. As soon as you're strong enough to walk. But before you go to him, you need to understand something about King Ronaldo Eaton. I set the water glass on the nightstand, waiting. He's not like other alphas. He's not even like other king wolves. He's complicated, dangerous. He's killed more rogues than any king in the last 3 centuries. He's negotiated peace treaties that everyone said were impossible. He's built this court from nothing, united territories that had been at war for generations. Jonathan's eyes locked onto mine. He's also completely, utterly alone. I don't understand. King wolves don't have packs the way normal alphas do. We serve him, but we're not his pack. He has no family. His parents died when he was young. No siblings, no close friends, and he's never taken a mate. Jonathan's voice softened, not because he hasn't wanted to, but because king wolves mate differently than the rest of us. Their bonds are stronger, more absolute, and more dangerous. The way he said dangerous made my skin prickle. Why are you telling me this? Because he asked me to. Because he wants you to know what you're walking into before you see him. Jonathan stood, moving to the window. The king is not good at expressing emotions. He spent so long being a symbol, a weapon, a leader, that he's forgotten how to be just a person. When you see him, he might seem cold, distant, but that's not rejection, that's protection. He's protecting you from himself. I don't need protection, I said quietly. I'm already dying. Jonathan turned back to me, and for the first time, I saw real emotion on his face. Sadness, maybe, or something close to it. That's exactly why he's terrified of you. Before I could ask what he meant, there was a knock on the door. Come in, Jonathan called. The door opened to reveal a young woman carrying a tray of food. She had dark curls and nervous eyes, and she wouldn't look directly at either of us. The king's compliments, she said, setting the tray on a table near the bed. He asks that you eat and regain your strength. When you're ready, Beta Jonathan will escort you to his chambers. She left quickly, closing the door behind her. I looked at the tray: fresh bread, cheese, fruit, and some kind of soup that smelled incredible. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since before the rejection ceremony. Eat, Jonathan said. Take your time. The king can wait. But as I picked up the spoon and started on the soup, I wondered if that was true. Something about the urgency in Jonathan's voice, the tension in his shoulders, suggested that time was not something we had much of. An hour later, dressed in clean clothes that someone had left for me, simple but well made, soft cotton that didn't irritate my sensitive skin, I followed Jonathan through the castle. The sun was rising now, sending golden light through the tall windows. The castle was waking up around us, servants moving through corridors, wolves in human form heading to various duties, the quiet hum of a place full of life and purpose. Everyone who saw us stopped and stared. Not at Jonathan, at me. I could feel their curiosity, their confusion, and underneath it, their suspicion. Who was this Omega? Why was the beta personally escorting her? What business did she have with the king? Ignore them, Jonathan said quietly as we climbed a spiral staircase. They're not used to strangers in the castle. Especially not rejected Omegas who apparently have the power to save dying kings. Is that what they're saying? That and more colorful theories. Court gossip moves faster than wildfire. He gave me a slight smile. You've caused quite a stir, Loopy fam. We reached a landing and Jonathan stopped in front of an ornate door. 2 guards stood on either side, massive alphas who watched me with unreadable expressions. The king is inside, Jonathan said. He's expecting you. I'll wait here. My heart was suddenly racing. What do I say to him? Whatever feels right. He doesn't expect formality, he gets enough of that from everyone else. Jonathan's expression softened. Just be yourself. That's what he wants. One of the guards opened the door. I took a deep breath and walked inside. The room was not what I expected. Instead of the grand throne room or formal receiving area I'd imagined, I found myself in something that looked almost normal. It was large, yes, with high ceilings and expensive furniture, but it felt lived in. Books everywhere on shelves, stacked on tables, piled on the floor. Maps covering one wall. A desk, covered in papers and correspondence. Windows open to let in the morning breeze. And in the center of it all, standing with his back to me, was a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing simple dark pants and a loose white shirt. His black hair was longer than I'd expected, falling past his collar. He stood completely still, looking out the window at the forest beyond. You came. His voice was deep, rougher than I'd imagined, and something about it made my chest tighten. You asked for me. I did. He still hadn't turned around. How are you feeling? Like I'm dying, I said honestly. Because I am. Finally, he turned. I forgot how to breathe. He was beautiful, not in the classical way Terence had been. All symmetrical features and easy charm. King Ronaldo Eaton was beautiful the way a storm was beautiful. The way a predator was beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled, and those eyes the same gold I'd seen in his wolf form, but somehow more intense in his human face. They looked at me like they could see straight through to my soul. Thank you, he said quietly. For last night. For staying when you could have run. For singing when you had every reason to be silent. I couldn't just let you die. Why not? It wasn't a challenge, it was a genuine question. You didn't know me. You were suffering from bond rot and rejection trauma. You had no obligation to help a dying wolf in the forest. I thought about it, really thought about it. Because you looked at me. When I first found you, when you were barely conscious and bleeding out, you looked at me and I saw recognition. Not of my face, but of something else. Like you understood what it felt like to be broken and alone. Something flickered across his face, pain, maybe, or recognition of his own. I do understand that, he said. Better than most. He moved closer. And I forced myself not to step back. This close, I could see the bandages under his shirt, could smell the healing salves, and underneath them, something that was purely him, cedar and smoke. And something wild that made my Omega instincts sing despite the dead bond in my chest. I have a proposition for you, he said. Though calling it a proposition might be generous, it's more of a mutually beneficial arrangement. I'm listening. You're dying. Bond rot from a fated mate rejection is fatal in most cases. You have maybe 6 months, probably less. He said it matter-of-factly, without pity. I can fix that. My breath caught. How? King wolves have certain abilities. Gifts that regular alphas don't possess. One of them is the ability to form temporary bonds. Not mate bonds, but something similar. Strong enough to override bond rot. Strong enough to keep you alive. Hope flared in my chest, painful and desperate. Why would you do that? What do you want from me? Your voice. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Last night, when you sang to me, I felt peace for the first time in years. Real peace, not just absence of pain. And I need that, Lupe. I need someone who can pull me back from the edge when the darkness gets too heavy. That's it? You just want me to sing to you? I want you to stay here, in the castle. I'll give you anything you need, rooms, books, freedom to go where you please within the territory. In exchange, you stay close enough that when I need you, you're there. It sounded too good to be true. What's the catch? The catch is that the bond I'm offering won't be gentle. It won't be like a fated mate bond those grow naturally, softly. This will be forced, artificial, held together by will rather than destiny. It might hurt. It will definitely be uncomfortable, and it will tie you to me in ways you might not like. But I'll live. You'll live, he confirmed. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the scars on his hands, the tension in his shoulders, the exhaustion in those gold eyes. He was powerful, yes. Dangerous, definitely. But he was also lonely and hurting, and trying to save me because I'd saved him first. Okay, I said. I'll stay. Just like that? You don't want time to think about it? I've spent my whole life thinking, trying to figure out how to be good enough, strong enough, worthy enough. Where did it get me? I lifted my chin. You're offering me a chance to live, to matter to someone, even if it's just as a voice in the darkness. That's more than I had before. Something in his expression shifted, not quite a smile, but close to it. Then we have an agreement. I'll perform the bonding ritual tonight, after sunset. Until then, rest. Eat. Let the healers check your wounds. And Lupe? Yes? Don't be afraid of me. I'm many things, but I would never hurt you. Not intentionally. As I left his chambers and followed Jonathan back through the castle, I wondered if that was true. I wondered if a king who'd forgotten how to be human could really promise not to hurt someone. And I wondered why, despite all logic and reason, I believed him anyway. Chapter 4. The Bonding Ritual. The rest of the day passed in a strange blur of normalcy and unreality. A healer came to check on me, not the one from last night, but a gentle older woman named Marilyn Driscoll who examined me with careful hands and concerned eyes. She confirmed what I already knew. The bond rot was spreading faster than expected. I had weeks, maybe a month, not the 6 months Ronaldo had estimated. The rejection was particularly brutal, Marilyn said quietly, her fingers glowing with diagnostic magic as she pressed them to my chest. Whoever severed the bond did it with force, not care. They wanted to make sure it couldn't be repaired. Of course Terrence had. He'd wanted to make absolutely certain I couldn't come crawling back, couldn't try to re-establish what he'd destroyed. The cruelty of it shouldn't have surprised me anymore, but it still hurt. Can the king really fix this? I asked. Marilyn's expression was complicated. King wolves have abilities the rest of us don't fully understand. If he says he can form a bond strong enough to override the rot, then I believe him. But Lupe. She hesitated. Artificial bonds are not gentle things. They're held together by will and magic, not natural compatibility. It will feel wrong at first. Foreign. Like wearing someone else's skin. But I'll live. You'll live, she confirmed. The question is whether you'll want to, once you feel what it's like to be bonded to a king. She left me with that ominous warning and a tonic that tasted like pine needles and made my head feel slightly fuzzy. I spent the afternoon in the rooms they'd given me, a suite actually, with a bedroom, a sitting room, and a small library that made my heart ache with longing. I'd never had access to so many books before. In Clearwater Pack, Omegas were expected to focus on domestic skills, not reading. I pulled down volume after volume, running my fingers over leather bindings and gold-embossed titles. History, philosophy, poetry, fairy tales from cultures I'd never heard of. I could spend years here and never run out of things to read. But would I have years? Or would the bond with Ronaldo fail? Would the rot take me anyway? Would I? A knock on the door interrupted my spiral of anxiety. Come in, I called. Jonathan entered, carrying a dress draped over his arm. The king asked me to bring you this, for the ceremony tonight. I took the dress carefully. It was simpler than I'd expected, deep blue silk that felt like water under my fingers, with long sleeves and a high neckline. Elegant but not ostentatious. The kind of dress that whispered rather than shouted. It was his mother's, Jonathan said quietly. She died when he was 12. He doesn't let anyone touch her things. But he wanted you to have this. The weight of that gesture hit me like a physical blow. I can't, this is too much. What if I damage it? Then you damage it. Lupe, the king doesn't do things like this lightly. If he's giving you his mother's dress, it means something. Don't refuse it. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Jonathan studied me for a moment. Are you having second thoughts? About the bonding? No. About everything else? Yes. I sat down on the edge of the bed, still holding the dress. I don't understand why he's doing this. What does he really get out of this arrangement? I told you this morning, peace. Solace. Something to hold on to when the weight of being king becomes too much. Jonathan leaned against the doorframe. But there's more to it than that, I think. You intrigue him. You're the first person in years who's looked at him and seen a person. Not a symbol or a weapon or a means to power. That's rare for someone in his position. I'm nobody, I said. A rejected Omega, with no gifts and no future. Why would someone like him care about someone like me? Because you sang to him in the darkness and asked for nothing in return. Because you're dying and you're still worried about damaging a dress. Because you see the world differently than we do. And he's desperate for a different perspective. Jonathan pushed off from the doorframe. The ceremony starts at sunset. I'll come get you when it's time. The sun was setting when Jonathan returned, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that hurt to look at. I'd put on the dress, it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for me, and braided my hair simply. I looked like someone else in the mirror, someone worthy of standing beside a king. The illusion was comforting, even if I knew it was a lie. Jonathan led me through the castle, but this time we went down instead of up. Down spiraling staircases, through corridors that grew narrower and darker, until we reached a door that looked like it was made of solid iron. This is the bonding chamber, Jonathan said. It's warded against outside interference. Once you go inside, no one can reach you except the king. If something goes wrong, I'll scream very loudly, I offered, trying for humor and failing. Jonathan didn't smile. If something goes wrong, the bond will either kill you or drive you mad. Those are the only two outcomes for failed artificial bonds. So please, Lupe, if at any point this feels wrong, truly wrong, not just uncomfortable, you tell him to stop. Understood? Understood. He opened the door. The chamber beyond was not what I expected. Instead of cold stone and ritualistic symbols, I found warmth. Candles everywhere, casting soft golden light. The floor was covered in thick rugs, and in the center of the room, standing beside a low table covered in what looked like ceremonial tools, was Ronaldo. He'd changed into formal clothing, dark pants, a shirt that looked like it was made of shadows and starlight, and a coat embroidered with symbols I didn't recognize. He looked every inch the king, powerful and untouchable, until he saw me, and something in his expression softened. You look beautiful, he said quietly. It's the dress. Your mother had good taste. It's not the dress. He moved closer, and I forced myself not to retreat. Are you ready? No. Yes. Lupe, I need you to understand something before we start. He took my hand, and the touch sent electricity racing up my arm. This bond will change you, not who you are, but how you experience the world. You'll be able to feel what I feel, not all the time, but when emotions are strong, and I'll feel you the same way. There will be no secrets between us, not really, no hiding. Is that something you can live with? I thought about Terrence, about how he'd hidden his disgust and shame from me until the rejection ceremony, about how I'd believed he cared, right up until the moment he destroyed me in front of everyone. Honesty sounds like a gift, not a curse, I said. Something flickered in Ronaldo's eyes. Approval, maybe, or relief. Then let's begin. He led me to the center of the room, where two cushions faced each other. We sat, close enough that our knees almost touched. Give me your hands, he said. I placed my hands in his, palm to palm. His hands were larger than mine, scarred and calloused, warm and solid. The ritual is simple, he explained. I'll channel my power through the touch, and you'll need to accept it. Don't fight it. Don't try to push it away. Just let it flow into you. It will feel invasive at first, like someone reaching into your chest and rearranging your insides. But if you can push through that initial discomfort, the bond will settle. And if I can't push through it, then we stop, and you die slowly from bond rot, instead of quickly from magical backlash. I'd prefer the former, if I'm honest. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Your bedside manner needs work. I'm aware. He took a breath. Ready? I nodded. The power hit me like a wave. It poured through his hands into mine, hot and electric and overwhelming. I gasped, trying to pull away, but Ronaldo's grip tightened. Stay with me, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Don't run, I've got you. The power kept coming, flooding my system, seeking out the dead bond in my chest where Terrence had severed our connection. It found the rot, the decay, the poison that was slowly killing me, and it burned it away. I screamed. I couldn't help it. The pain was enormous, like being set on fire from the inside out. The bond rot fought back, clinging to my chest, my heart, my soul, refusing to be dislodged. But Ronaldo's power was stronger, relentless, and it scraped away every trace of Terrence's rejection, until there was nothing left but raw, bleeding emptiness. Almost there, Ronaldo said, and I realized he was hurting too. I could feel it through the connection forming between us, could feel the effort it took to maintain the flow of power, the strain of holding the bond stable while it burned away the rot. Then, finally, the pain shifted. Instead of burning, Ronaldo's power started to heal. It filled the empty space where the dead bond had been, weaving itself into my chest, my heart, my very essence. But it didn't feel like invasion anymore. It felt like coming home. I could feel him now, really feel him. His determination. His fear that he'd hurt me. His desperate hope that this would work. And underneath it all, a loneliness so profound it made me want to weep. He'd been alone for so long. So terribly, completely alone. Ronaldo, I whispered, and his eyes snapped to mine. You can feel me, he said, wonder in his voice. The bond is taking. Lupe, you're doing it. You're lonely, I said, tears streaming down my face. You've been lonely for years, and no one knows. No one sees it. His expression cracked, just for a moment, revealing pain so deep I could barely stand to witness it. No one has ever been close enough to see it. Until now. The bond settled into place with an almost audible click. The pain vanished, replaced by a warmth that spread through my entire body. I could feel the bond rot dying, withering away like plants in winter, and in its place life. Strength, the promise of tomorrow. Ronaldo released my hands and I swayed, suddenly exhausted. Easy, he said, catching me before I could fall. The first few hours are always difficult. Your body needs time to adjust to the foreign magic. But I barely heard him. I was too focused on the bond itself, on the thread of gold that now connected us. I could feel him at the other end of it, could sense his presence like a second heartbeat in my chest. It doesn't feel wrong, I said, surprised. Marilyn said it would feel wrong. But it doesn't. It feels right. Ronaldo's arms tightened around me. That's because you're stronger than she gave you credit for. Stronger than anyone gives you credit for. He pulled back slightly to look at me, and in his eyes I saw something that made my breath catch. Thank you. For trusting me. For giving me this. You saved my life. You saved mine first. He countered. This just makes us even. But we both knew that wasn't true. This bond, this connection, this strange arrangement we'd entered into it was more than just trading favors. It was the beginning of something neither of us fully understood yet. Something that would change everything. He carried me back to my rooms after the ceremony, refusing to let me walk even though I insisted I could manage. The bond hummed between us, warm and alive, and I could feel his satisfaction at being able to care for me, even in this small way. Rest, he said, laying me gently on the bed. Tomorrow we'll begin properly. I'll show you the castle, introduce you to the court, teach you what it means to be bonded to a king. But tonight, just rest. Will I see you tomorrow? The question came out smaller than I intended, almost vulnerable. Every day, he promised. The bond requires proximity, especially in the early stages. We'll need to spend time together daily, at minimum. Is that acceptable? More than acceptable. The thought of going days without seeing him, without feeling that steady presence at the other end of the bond, made anxiety spike in my chest. He felt it through the connection. His eyes softened. I feel the same way. The bond works both ways, Lupe. You're not alone in this anymore. You're not alone in anything. After he left, I lay in the darkness and felt the bond pulse with life in my chest. Felt Ronaldo moving through the castle. Felt his exhaustion and his relief and his cautious, fragile hope. And for the first time since Terence had rejected me, I believed that maybe, just maybe, I might actually survive this. Not just survive, live. Really, truly live. Chapter 5. Learning to be seen. I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the strange, disorienting sensation of not being alone in my own head. The bond pulsed gently in my chest, and through it I could feel Ronaldo somewhere else in the castle. He was awake, had been for hours probably, and he was. Working? No, arguing with someone. I could feel his frustration, sharp and hot, directed at whatever unfortunate soul had earned his displeasure this early in the morning. Then the frustration softened, replaced by something gentler. Awareness. He'd felt me wake up through the bond. Good morning. The words appeared in my mind, not spoken but somehow transmitted through the golden thread connecting us. How do you feel? I sat up slowly, testing my body. The bond rot was gone, completely gone. I felt stronger than I had in months, maybe years. My muscles didn't ache, my head didn't pound, and the constant nausea that had plagued me since the rejection had vanished entirely. Better, I thought back, not sure if he could hear me. Much better. Good. I could feel his satisfaction, warm and pleased. Someone will bring you breakfast shortly. When you're ready, Jonathan will escort you to my office. We have much to discuss. The connection faded slightly, giving me privacy but never disappearing completely. I could still sense him at the edge of my awareness. A steady presence that should have felt invasive but somehow didn't. Maybe Marilyn had been wrong. Maybe artificial bonds didn't have to feel wrong if the people on either end actually wanted to be connected. Breakfast arrived as promised, more food than I could possibly eat, brought by the same nervous young woman from yesterday. She still wouldn't meet my eyes, but she lingered in the doorway after setting down the tray. Can I help you with something? I asked gently. She jumped. Forgive me, miss. I didn't mean to stare, it's just the bond. We can all feel it. The king's energy has changed since last night. He feels lighter. Lighter? Less heavy, I mean. The king carries a lot of weight, and it shows in his aura. But today, there's something different. Something good. She finally looked at me, her eyes wide with curiosity. What did you do to him? I didn't do anything. He did all the work. That's not what Beta Jonathan says. He says you pulled the king back from death itself. That you have a gift for healing. I wanted to laugh at that. Me, with a gift? The Omega who couldn't shift, couldn't sense pack bonds, couldn't do anything useful? But the girl looked so earnest, so hopeful, that I couldn't bring myself to crush her fantasy. I just sang, I said. That's all. Sometimes that's enough, she said softly, and slipped away before I could respond. Jonathan arrived an hour later, looking tired but satisfied. The king is dealing with a trade dispute between two territories. It's taking longer than expected. He asks that you wait in the library adjacent to his office. He says you'll find it comfortable. Comfortable was an understatement. The library was enormous, 3 stories tall with a spiral staircase connecting the levels. Every wall was lined with books, thousands of them, in more languages than I could identify. Comfortable chairs were scattered throughout, along with reading lamps and small tables perfect for taking notes. I stood in the center of it, overwhelmed. The king said you enjoyed reading, Jonathan said, watching my reaction with amusement. He thought you might like to explore while you wait. I couldn't find words. How does he have so many books? Collecting them is one of his few hobbies. He's been building this library for 15 years, acquiring texts from every territory under his rule and beyond. Some of these volumes are one of a kind, the last surviving copies of their kind. I moved to the nearest shelf, running my fingers over the spines. History of the Northern Territories, The Philosophy of Pack Bonds. A Study of Omega Gifts Throughout the Ages. My heart ached with longing. You can read any of them, Jonathan said. The king's orders. Consider the library yours. Mine? He said, and I quote, tell her the books are hers to do with as she pleases. If she wants to read them all, reorganize them by color, or build forts out of them, I don't care. They're hers. Jonathan's lips twitched. I don't think he was joking about the forts. Despite everything, the strangeness of this new life, the artificial bond, the uncertainty of tomorrow, I smiled. A real smile. The first in longer than I could remember. I'll try not to build forts, I said. But I'm not making any promises. I lost track of time in the library. I pulled down volume after volume, devouring information like I was starving. And in a way I was. I'd spent my whole life being told that reading was a waste of time for omegas. That I should focus on practical skills, instead of filling my head with useless knowledge. But here, surrounded by books that someone valued enough to collect and preserve, I felt like I'd finally found a place where my hunger for learning wasn't a flaw. I was deep in a fascinating treatise on ancient Omega traditions when I felt Ronaldo's presence approaching through the bond. Not just his emotions but his physical proximity. He was close. I looked up just as the library door opened. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes, tension in his shoulders. And through the bond I could feel the weight of whatever he'd been dealing with all morning. But when he saw me curled up in a chair with a book, something in his expression softened. You found the library, he said. Jonathan said you wanted me to wait here. I hope that's okay. More than okay. He crossed the room and sat in the chair across from mine. Close enough that I could have reached out and touched him. What are you reading? I held up the book. It's about Omega traditions in pre-pack societies. Did you know that before packs formed and hierarchies became rigid, Omegas were considered spiritual leaders? They were the ones who communicated with the moon goddess, who performed rituals, who held communities together through their gifts. I did know that. Actually, that's one of my favorite volumes in the collection. He leaned back, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. What else have you learned? That everything I was taught about Omegas is wrong. We're not just meant to be caregivers and bearers of children. We're supposed to be healers, mediators, spiritual guides. We're supposed to be powerful in our own right. And they took that from you, Ronaldo said quietly. Your pack, your family, your rejected mate, they all looked at you and saw a broken Omega, because you didn't fit their narrow definition of what Omegas should be. They never considered that maybe you were meant for something different. The words hit me like a physical blow, validation I hadn't known I desperately needed. I can't shift, I said, my voice small. I can't sense pack bonds properly. I can't have children. What kind of Omega does that make me? The kind who saves dying kings with nothing but her voice. The kind who chooses to live even when fate seems determined to kill her. The kind who sees the world differently than everyone else and refuses to apologize for it. He leaned forward, his gold eyes intense. Loop, you are not broken. You never were. You're just something the world doesn't have a name for yet. I felt tears prick my eyes. Through the bond, I could feel that he believed every word. He wasn't saying this to make me feel better, or to manipulate me. He truly saw value in me. Saw potential where everyone else had seen failure. Why do you care? I whispered. You barely know me. Why does it matter to you whether I believe I'm worthy? Because I know what it's like to be something people don't understand. To be powerful in ways that make others uncomfortable. To be alone because you don't fit into any of the boxes society has created. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and took my hand. And because when you look at me, you don't see the king, you see me. That's rare enough to be worth protecting. We sat there for a long moment, hands clasped. The bond humming between us with warmth and understanding. I have court in an hour, Ronaldo said eventually, though he didn't let go of my hand. I need to introduce you formally. The court needs to know you're under my protection, that you're bonded to me, and that anyone who harms you answers to me directly. My stomach twisted with anxiety. Will they accept that? A rejected Omega suddenly appearing at court? They'll accept it because I command it. But Lupe, he squeezed my hand gently. I won't lie to you. There will be challenges. People who question why I've bonded with you, who wonder what you offer that their daughters or sisters don't. The court is full of politics and power plays, and you'll be caught in the middle of it. Then why do this? Why not keep me hidden away? Because hiding you suggests I'm ashamed of you, and I'm not. Because you deserve to exist in the world without fear or shame. And because... He paused, searching for words. Because I'm tired of pretending, tired of playing the role of the perfect, untouchable king. You make me feel human again, and I want the court to see that. Even if they don't understand it. Through the bond, I felt his sincerity, his determination, and underneath it, his fear not of the court's reaction, but of failing me somehow, of not being enough to protect me from the cruelty he knew I'd face. I'm not afraid, I said, and realized it was true. I've already survived the worst thing I could imagine. What's a little court politics compared to that? His expression shifted into something that might have been pride. Then let's show them what a real Omega looks like. The throne room was packed. Word had spread quickly about the mysterious Omega who'd appeared at the castle, who'd saved the king's life, who'd been bonded to him in a ritual that should have killed her. Everyone wanted to see me, to judge me, to determine whether I was a threat or an opportunity. I stood beside Ronaldo's throne, wearing another dress that had belonged to his mother, this one a deep green that brought out the gold flecks in my eyes. My hair was braided and pinned, and someone had insisted on jewelry, simple silver pieces that felt heavy and foreign. But none of that mattered because I could feel Ronaldo beside me, could feel his steady presence through the bond, could draw strength from the fact that he wanted me here. Members of the court, Ronaldo's voice rang out, commanding instant silence. I present to you Lupe Pham, formerly of Clearwater Pack, now under my direct protection as my bonded companion. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw shock, confusion, calculation on dozens of faces. Some of you will question this decision, Ronaldo continued. You will wonder why I would bond with a rejected Omega, why I would give someone with no pack standing a position at my side. Let me be clear. Lupe is here because I choose her to be here. Her worth is not determined by her past, her previous pack, or your opinions. It is determined by me, and I have found her worthy. More murmurs. Some angry now. A woman stepped forward from the crowd, tall, beautiful, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my parents' house. Your Majesty, with all due respect, the court has a right to understand the nature of this bond. Is this a political alliance? A romantic entanglement? Are we to expect? You are to expect respect. Ronaldo cut her off, his voice like ice. The nature of my relationship with Lupe is no one's concern but ours. What you need to understand is that she is protected by me, bonded to me, and any insult to her is an insult to me. Is that clear? The woman's eyes widened. She bowed quickly and retreated, but I could see the calculation in her eyes, could see it reflected in dozens of other faces. They would test this bond, test me, try to find weaknesses to exploit. Let them try. I'd survived rejection by my fated mate. I'd survived bond rot. I'd survived the bonding ritual itself. A court full of ambitious wolves? That was nothing. I lifted my chin and met their stares with calm defiance, and through the bond, I felt Ronaldo's approval wash over me like sunlight. That's my Omega, his voice whispered in my mind. Show them who you really are. And for the first time in my life, I thought maybe I could. Chapter 6. The question that changes everything. 3 weeks passed like a dream I was afraid to wake from. Every morning, I woke to Ronaldo's presence in the bond, that steady reassurance that I wasn't alone. We fell into a routine that felt both foreign and natural. Breakfast together in his private dining room, where he dealt with correspondence while I read. Afternoons in the library, where we'd discuss philosophy and history, and argue about interpretations of ancient texts. Evenings walking through the castle gardens, talking about everything and nothing. And every night, before we parted to our separate rooms, he would ask me the same question. Will you stay? Never will you marry me? Like the original Beauty and the Beast tale. Not a proposal, but something simpler, and somehow more profound. A question about choice, about whether I wanted to be here tomorrow, whether the bond and the life we were building together was enough. And every night I would answer, yes, I'll stay. But recently the question had started to feel heavier, weighted with meaning I couldn't quite parse. It was the 4th week when everything shifted. We were in the library, our library now. I'd started thinking of it as, and I was reading aloud from a collection of folk tales, while Ronaldo worked through a stack of treaties that needed his approval. This had become one of our favorite routines. He said my voice helped him focus, helped him think more clearly. I suspected he just liked listening to me, but I didn't mind. And the princess realized that true love wasn't about finding someone perfect, I read, but about finding someone whose imperfections fit with yours like pieces of a puzzle. I paused. That's a nice sentiment, but completely unrealistic. Ronaldo looked up from his papers. Why unrealistic? Because people don't fit together like puzzle pieces. We're not manufactured to match. We're messy and complicated and we change. What fits today might not fit tomorrow. But the bond, he said slowly, setting down his pen. Doesn't that make us fit? The artificial bond we created, it literally connects us, makes us aware of each other in ways that should create compatibility. The bond makes us connected, I countered. That's not the same as fitting together. Connection is awareness. Fitting together is something else. Something deeper. He was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those intense gold eyes. Do you feel like we fit together? The question hung in the air between us, dangerous and thrilling. I don't know, I said honestly. I feel like we understand each other. I feel like being with you is easier than being with anyone else I've ever known. But fitting together? That implies a permanence I'm not sure we have. Because the bond is artificial, he said, not a question. Because everything about this is artificial. The bond, my position at court, even this conversation, we're only having it because you needed someone to keep you anchored, and I needed someone to keep me alive. That's not the foundation for whatever this is becoming. Ronaldo stood and crossed to where I sat, kneeling so we were eye level. The gesture was so unexpected, so vulnerable, a king kneeling before a rejected omega, that my breath caught. What if I told you it stopped being artificial weeks ago? He said quietly. What if I told you that somewhere between the bonding ritual and now, I stopped seeing you as a solution to loneliness and started seeing you as someone essential, not because of the bond, but because of who you are. My heart was racing. Through the bond, I could feel his nervousness, his fear of rejection, his desperate hope that I felt even a fraction of what he was feeling. Ronaldo, I'm not asking you to love me, he interrupted. I know that's not something that can be forced or manufactured. I'm just telling you that He took a breath. I care about you, Lupe. More than I've cared about anyone in longer than I can remember. And I need you to know that before I ask you what I'm about to ask. What are you going to ask? His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing gently across my cheekbone. Will you consider making this bond permanent? Not just an artificial connection to keep you alive, but a real mate bond. The kind that can't be broken, can't be severed, can't be undone. The world stopped. You're asking me to be your mate, I whispered. Your queen. I'm asking you to be my partner. My equal. My choice. His eyes searched mine. The bond we have now, it's kept you alive. Yes. But it's also temporary. If I died, it would dissolve and you'd be vulnerable again. But a true mate bond? That would be permanent protection. Permanent connection. Permanent everything. That's not a small thing to ask. I know. That's why I'm not expecting an answer tonight, or tomorrow, or even next week. Take all the time you need. But Lupe. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. I need you to know that I want this. Not because you're useful. Not because you keep me anchored. But because I cannot imagine my life without you in it anymore. Through the bond, I felt the truth of his words. Felt his longing, his hope. His bone-deep certainty that I was what he'd been missing all these years. And terrifyingly, I felt my own heart responding. Felt something inside me that had been closed off since Terrence's rejection beginning to crack open again. I was rejected by my fated mate, I said, my voice shaking. The universe chose someone for me, and he looked at me with disgust. How do I trust that you won't do the same? How do I trust that this isn't just novelty? And once you really know me, once you see all my flaws and failures, you won't regret this. Because I already see your flaws, Ronaldo said gently. I see that you're stubborn and argumentative and you challenge everything I say. I see that you have nightmares about the rejection, and sometimes you wake up terrified that this is all a dream. I see that you don't trust easily, that you question kindness, that you expect betrayal. I see all of it, Loopy, and I still want you. Tears were streaming down my face now. Why? Because your stubbornness means you won't let me make stupid decisions without challenge. Because your nightmares mean you understand pain, and that makes you compassionate. Because your mistrust is earned and wise, and you're choosing to trust me anyway. He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching mine. Because you sing to dying wolves in the darkness and ask for nothing in return. Because you're everything I didn't know I needed. I'm barren, I whispered, playing my last card. I can't give you children. I can't give you heirs. What kind of queen can't? The kind who's worth more than her reproductive capacity, he interrupted fiercely. Lupe, I don't need children. I need you. The court might expect heirs, but I expect to wake up every morning for the rest of my life and feel you at the other end of this bond. That's all I want. Everything else is negotiable. I was sobbing now. Ugly crying in a way I hadn't let myself since the rejection. All the fear and shame and desperate hope I'd been carrying for weeks was pouring out, and Ronaldo just held me, let me soak his shirt with tears, let me fall apart in his arms. I'm scared. I finally managed. I'm so scared of wanting this and having it taken away again. I know, he murmured into my hair. I'm scared too. But Lupe, being scared just means we have something worth protecting. And I promise you, I will protect this, protect you, with everything I have. We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other on the library floor. The bond pulsing with shared emotion so intense it almost hurt. When I finally pulled back enough to look at him, I said, I can't answer you tonight. I need time. Take all the time you need, he said immediately. A week, a month, a year. I'm not going anywhere. What if I say no? Pain flashed across his face, but he didn't look away. Then I respect your choice, and we continue as we are. The artificial bond stays in place. You remain under my protection, and nothing has to change unless you want it to. You wouldn't resent me? I might be disappointed. I might hurt. But resent you? Never. He stood, offering me his hand. You've already given me more than I had any right to ask for. If friendship and partnership is all you can offer, then that's enough. It will always be enough. Through the bond, I knew he was telling the truth. But I also felt his hope, fragile and desperate, that I would choose more. The next week was torture. I couldn't stop thinking about his proposal. Everywhere I went in the castle, every conversation we had, every quiet moment in the library, the question hung between us like a living thing. Will you be my mate? The court had noticed something was different. I caught whispers, sideways glances, speculation about what was happening between the king and his bonded Omega. Some people seemed hopeful. Others seemed horrified at the thought of a rejected Omega becoming queen. Susie, the blonde alpha who'd been suspicious of me from the beginning, cornered me in the hallway one afternoon. He's going to ask you to mate with him, she said without preamble. If he hasn't already. That's between him and me, I said, trying to move past her. She blocked my path. You need to understand what you'd be taking on. Being queen isn't just about standing beside him and looking pretty. It's about politics, about alliances, about making decisions that affect thousands of lives. Do you really think you're qualified for that? A Omega who can't even shift? I think that's for Ronaldo to decide, not you. He's lonely, Susie pressed. He's desperate for connection. And you're convenient, you keep him calm. You make him feel human. But is that really enough to build a reign on? What happens when the novelty wears off and he realizes he needs a real partner? Someone with actual power and political standing. Her words hit all my insecurities like arrows finding their marks. But I forced myself to meet her eyes steadily. If he changes his mind, that's his right. But I won't make decisions based on your fears or your ambitions. I stepped around her. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have somewhere to be. I felt her anger through the air as I walked away, but I didn't let myself look back. That night, Ronaldo found me in the gardens. I'd been coming here when I needed to think. When the castle walls felt too close and my thoughts too loud. He sat beside me on the stone bench without speaking, just offering his presence. Through the bond, I could feel his patience. his willingness to wait as long as I needed. Susie confronted me today, I said finally. She thinks I'm not qualified to be queen, that I'm just convenient. Susie is ambitious and sees you as competition, Ronaldo said calmly. Her opinion doesn't matter. But what if she's right? What if I'm not enough for this role? He turned to face me fully. Lupe, do you know what makes a good queen? It's not political connections, or the ability to shift, or any of the arbitrary measures the court uses. It's wisdom, compassion, the courage to stand up for what's right even when it's difficult. And you have all of that in abundance. I'm scared, I admitted. Not of being queen, I'm scared of wanting this too much, of letting myself believe in happy endings again. Then don't think of it as a happy ending, he said. Think of it as a beginning. We'll figure out the rest together. He stood and offered his hand. Walk with me? I took his hand and let him lead me deeper into the gardens, where the moonlight filtered through the trees and night-blooming flowers filled the air with sweetness. I need to tell you something, he said as we walked. Something I should have told you before I asked you to mate with me. My heart clenched. What? The bond we have now, the artificial one I created, it's been changing. Evolving into something closer to a real mate bond. I didn't plan it, didn't expect it, but our emotions, our connection, they've been reinforcing the magic until it's become almost indistinguishable from the real thing. What does that mean? It means that even if you say no to making it permanent, we're already more bonded than I initially intended. It means that losing you would hurt me almost as much as losing a true mate. He stopped walking and turned to face me. And it means that I should have been honest about that before I asked you to consider forever. I stared at him, processing this information. You're saying the choice is already half made. I'm saying the bond between us is real, whether we make it official or not. I'm saying I've fallen for you, Lupe, and there's no taking that back. His voice was raw with emotion, and I'm saying that I'm sorry if that makes your decision harder. Through the bond, I felt his fear not of rejection, but of having trapped me somehow, of having taken away my choice without meaning to. And suddenly, with perfect clarity, I knew my answer. I'll stay, I said. He blinked. What? That's what you ask me every night. Will you stay? And every night I say yes, but I've been answering the wrong question. I took his hands in mine. You're not asking if I'll stay tonight, or tomorrow, or next week. You're asking if I'll stay forever. If I'll choose this life, this bond, this future with you. Lupe. Yes, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Yes, I'll mate with you. Yes, I'll be your queen. Yes to all of it, because I've already chosen you. I chose you when I sang to you in the river. I chose you when I agreed to the bonding ritual. I've been choosing you every single day, and I'm tired of pretending that's ever going to change. The expression on his face was pure joy, unguarded and overwhelming. He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. Are you sure? He whispered against my hair. Because once we do this, there's no going back. A true mate bond is permanent. I'm sure, I said. I'm terrified and hopeful and probably making a huge mistake, but I'm sure, because you make me want to believe in happy endings again, and that's worth the risk. He kissed me, then our first real kiss, soft and sweet and full of promise. Through the bond, I felt his love wash over me like a wave, pure and unconditional, and everything I'd thought I'd never have. When we finally pulled apart, he was smiling. A real smile, the kind I'd rarely seen from him. Tomorrow, he said, we'll make it official tomorrow. The whole court will witness it. Are you ready for that? No, I admitted. But I'll do it anyway. That's my brave Omega, he murmured, pressing another kiss to my forehead. My mate, my queen, my everything. And as we walked back to the castle hand in hand, I realized that Susie had been wrong. I wasn't convenient. I wasn't a novelty. I was chosen. And that made all the difference. Chapter 7. The Truth in the Garden. I should have known happiness like this couldn't last. The morning of the mating ceremony dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect day that felt like the universe's blessing. I woke early, too excited and nervous to sleep, and felt Ronaldo's presence through the bond awake too, radiating a joy so pure it made my chest ache. Good morning, my mate, his voice whispered through the connection. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be, I thought back, smiling. I need to see you. Before the ceremony. Meet me in the garden? Something in his tone made me pause. Not fear, exactly, but something weighted, important. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I dressed quickly in a simple dress I'd saved the elaborate ceremony gown for later, and made my way through the quiet castle. Most people were still asleep. The ceremony wasn't until noon, and the castle had been celebrating late into the night. I found Ronaldo in the garden's heart, in a secluded area surrounded by flowering trees. He stood with his back to me, shoulders tense, and even before I reached him I could feel his turmoil through the bond. Something was wrong. Ronaldo? I approached slowly. What is it? What's happened? He turned, and the expression on his face made my blood run cold. Pain, regret, and underneath it all, a determination that felt like goodbye. We need to talk, he said quietly. Before the ceremony. Before we make this bond permanent. There's something you need to know. My heart started racing. You're scaring me. I should be. He gestured to a bench. Please, sit. This is going to be difficult. I sat, my hands clenched in my lap, while he paced in front of me like a caged animal. When I created the artificial bond, he began, I told you it was to save your life, to override the bond rot and keep you alive. And that was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. What do you mean? King wolves have a curse, he said, stopping to face me. Not the fairy tale kind. A real curse, passed down through bloodlines for generations. We're incredibly powerful. Yes, but that power comes with a price. We can't form natural mate bonds the way other wolves do. I frowned. I don't understand. You said we could make the bond permanent. We can, but it's not the same as a true fated mate bond. It's an artificial construct, held together by magic and will. He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. The curse states that king wolves must find someone who can love both the king and the beast, love us for who we are without knowing what we are. Only then can the curse be broken, and a real mate bond form. Dread was building in my stomach. Ronaldo, what are you saying? I'm saying that when you found me dying in the river, when you sang to me without knowing who I was, without knowing I was a king, that was the test. You saw me at my most vulnerable, my most monstrous, and you chose to help anyway. You chose compassion over fear. That's good, isn't it? That means you passed the test, he interrupted. That means the curse recognized you as my true mate. Not because of the artificial bond I created, but because of your choice that night. I should have felt joy. Instead, I felt ice spreading through my veins. Then why do you look like someone died? Because I ruined it. His voice broke. The curse requires that the king wolf's mate choose him, without knowing his identity, without being influenced by power, or status, or obligation. But I knew what you knew, you were my potential true mate, and I created the artificial bond anyway. I brought you to the castle, gave you reasons to stay, made you dependent on me for your survival. You saved my life. I protested. I influenced your choice. He was almost shouting now, anguish radiating through the bond. Don't you see? You agreed to mate with me, but was it really your choice? Or did you say yes, because I'm a king who offered you protection, who gave you a library and safety and a way out of dying from bond rot? How can I know? How can you know if your feelings are real or just manufactured by circumstance? I stood, anger cutting through my confusion. You think I said yes because you're convenient? Because you saved me? I think you said yes because I made it impossible to say no. Because I tied your survival to staying with me. Because I gave you everything you needed to feel safe. Because He broke off, turning away. Because I contaminated the test. The curse won't accept a bond formed under obligation. It requires pure choice, and I stole that from you. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. My voice was shaking with fury. You didn't steal anything from me. I chose to sing to you that night. I chose to stay when you offered the artificial bond. I chose to fall in love with you. Every step of this has been my choice. But would you have made those choices if I hadn't offered you survival first? He faced me again, tears streaming down his face. Would you have stayed if I hadn't given you the library? Would you have agreed to mate with me if you weren't already bonded to me? I've spent the last month trying to convince myself the answer is yes, but I can't know. And because I can't know, the curse won't break. So break it, I said desperately. Release me from the artificial bond. Send me away. Let me choose you again, freely this time. I can't. His voice was barely a whisper. If I break the bond now, the bond rot will come back. You'll die, Lupe. Probably within days. It's been suppressed for weeks, and it'll return with a vengeance. Then what are you saying? What do you want? He took a shuddering breath. I'm saying I can't mate with you today. I'm saying we need to wait, give you time away from me, away from the castle and the bond's influence. If, after that time, you still choose me, if you come back on your own without obligation or survival necessity, then maybe the curse will accept it. How much time? A year, he said, and the word felt like a death sentence. 1 year away from me. I'll maintain the artificial bond. You won't die. You'll still feel me at the edge of your awareness, but you need to live your own life. Build your own identity, separate from being my bonded Omega. And then, if you still want this, you come back. I was crying now, ugly sobs that shook my whole body. This is insane. You're throwing away what we have because of some ancient curse? I'm trying to give you a real choice, he said, moving closer but not touching me. Lupe, I love you. I love you so much it terrifies me, and that's exactly why I need to know your love is real, not manufactured by circumstances I created. You deserve that certainty. We both do. What if I don't come back? The question came out small, broken. Pain flashed across his face. Then I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I had something precious and lost it because I was too much of a coward to trust it. But at least you'll be free. At least you'll have had the choice. Through the bond, I felt his resolution. He'd made up his mind, and nothing I could say would change it. He believed this was the right thing to do, believed he was protecting me from his own influence. He was an idiot, but he was also the man I loved. And I could feel how much this was tearing him apart. Where will I go? I asked, defeated. I've arranged a cottage on the border of my territory. It's isolated but comfortable, with all the books you could want. You'll have money, resources, protection from a distance. You can do whatever you want, write, study, travel if you choose. Just live without me for a year. Figure out who you are when you're not my bonded Omega. And if the bond rot comes back, it won't. I'll maintain the artificial bond just enough to keep you alive and stable. You'll feel me, but distantly, like background noise instead of a constant presence. I wanted to scream, to rage, to tell him he was being noble and stupid and breaking both our hearts for no reason, but I could feel his certainty through the bond, could feel how much he needed to know that when I chose him, it was free and clear and untainted by obligation. Okay, I whispered. 1 year. But Ronaldo? I'm not doing this because I think you're right. I'm doing this because you need it, and I love you enough to give you what you need even when it's killing me. He pulled me into his arms then, holding me like I might disappear. I'm sorry. He breathed into my hair. I'm so sorry. If there was any other way. There isn't, I said, pulling back to look at him. Because you've decided there isn't. So I'll go. I'll live my year away from you, and then I'll come back and prove that my choice was always real, always mine, always free. And if you don't come back, I will, I interrupted fiercely. I will come back, and you'd better be ready for me, because I'm going to spend the entire year furious with you for this. Despite everything, he almost smiled. I'm counting on it. The cottage was beautiful in a lonely sort of way. It sat at the edge of a forest, with mountains rising in the distance, and a stream running nearby. Inside was everything Ronaldo had promised: comfortable furniture, a massive collection of books, writing supplies, and enough provisions to last months. It was perfect. I hated it. The artificial bond had been adjusted the night before I left. Ronaldo had performed another ritual, this one to dampen the connection between us. I could still feel him, a distant warmth at the back of my mind, but the vivid awareness of his emotions was gone. No more feeling his joy or pain or love, just presence. A reminder that he existed somewhere, thinking of me. The loneliness was crushing. For the first few weeks, I threw myself into reading. I worked through philosophy texts and histories, took notes, started writing my own observations about Omega traditions and the ways packs had distorted them over centuries. The work was engaging, important even, but it couldn't fill the void Ronaldo had left. I wrote him letters I never sent. Dozens of them, pouring out my anger and hurt and longing. "You're an idiot," I wrote. "You think you're being noble, but you're just scared. Scared that happiness might be real, scared that someone might choose you for who you are and not what you can give them. I chose you, you fool. I chose you." 3 months in, I started hearing rumors. The couple who brought my supplies once a week, kind middle-aged wolves who never pried but were friendly, mentioned that the king was hosting visitors at the castle. Foreign dignitaries, including a princess. "Beautiful thing," the woman said, unpacking groceries. "Princess Tracy Hoffman, from the Eastern Territories. Word is her father's trying to arrange an alliance through marriage." My heart stopped. "Marriage? Oh, it's probably just rumors," she said quickly, seeing my expression. "You know how court gossip is. But she's been there for 2 weeks now. And the king has been entertaining her personally." After they left, I sat on the floor and tried to breathe through the panic. He was moving on. Finding someone else. Someone who could choose him freely because they'd never been bonded to him, never been dependent on him for survival. Someone who could break his curse. The thought should have devastated me. Instead, it made me angry. If Ronaldo thought I was going to let some princess take what was mine, he had another thing coming. But I'd promised him a year. And despite everything, I was going to keep that promise. 6 months into my exile, I started writing a book, not about Omega traditions or pack history, but about my story, about rejection and survival and finding love in unexpected places. About a dying wolf and a broken Omega and the bond that saved them both. I wrote about Terrence's cruelty, about Ronaldo's loneliness, about the artificial bond and the curse and the year of separation. I wrote it all down, turning my pain into something that might help someone else someday. The writing was cathartic, but it also made me realize something important. I wasn't the same person who'd been rejected in Clearwater Pack. I wasn't even the same person who'd arrived at Ronaldo's castle 7 months ago. I'd grown, changed, become someone who could stand on her own, who didn't need a bond or a mate or anyone's validation to know her own worth. And ironically, that growth was exactly what Ronaldo had hoped for when he sent me away. The realization made me laugh and cry at the same time. He'd been right. Damn him, he'd been right. I had needed this time. Not to figure out if I loved him, I'd known that from the start. But to figure out who I was when I wasn't defined by rejection or salvation or any man's opinion of me. I was Lupe Pham. I was strong and stubborn and brave and brilliant in my own right. I could sing and write and think and choose my own path. And I chose Ronaldo. Not because he saved me, not because he was a king, not because of the bond or the castle or the library or any of the gifts he'd given me. I chose him because he saw me, really saw me, and loved what he saw. Because he was kind and lonely and trying so hard to do the right thing even when it broke his heart. Because when I looked at him, I saw home. That was the truth. Pure and simple and unshakable. 10 months into my exile, the supply couple brought news that made my blood run cold. "There's going to be a wedding," the man said, his expression carefully neutral. "The king and Princess Tracy. 2 weeks from now. The whole court's preparing for it." My vision blurred. "Are you sure?" Official announcement went out yesterday. The king himself confirmed it. The woman touched my arm gently. "I'm sorry, dear. I know you two were close." After they left, I sat in the cottage and felt like my world was ending. He'd given up on me. Found someone who could break the curse without all the complications I brought. Someone who could choose him freely because they'd never been bonded to him. Part of me wanted to curl up and die. But a bigger part, the part that had grown strong over 10 months of solitude, got angry instead. If Ronaldo was getting married, I was going to be there. Not to stop it. If he'd truly chosen someone else, I'd respect that. But to witness it. To know for certain, and maybe, just maybe, to remind him what he was giving up. Chapter 8. When Alphas Kneel. I arrived at the castle 2 days before the wedding, wearing a simple traveling cloak, and trying to look like just another curious observer drawn by the spectacle of a royal wedding. The castle grounds were transformed. Flowers everywhere, banners flying from every tower, pavilions set up in the gardens for the hundreds of guests who'd traveled from across the territories. The whole place buzzed with excitement and celebration. It made me want to scream. I'd arranged to stay at an inn in the nearby village. I couldn't bring myself to ask for rooms at the castle. Couldn't face the possibility of running into Ronaldo before I was ready. Through the dampened bond, I could feel him somewhere in the chaos, stressed and exhausted and radiating an emotion I couldn't quite identify. Not joy. Definitely not joy. But I couldn't trust my interpretation. The bond was too muted, and I was too raw. The day before the wedding, I went into the village square and found it packed with wolves discussing the upcoming ceremony. "Have you seen the princess?" a young woman was saying. "She's absolutely beautiful. Perfect for the king. I heard she can shift into 3 different forms," someone else added. "A wolf, a hawk, and something else. Very rare gift. And she's brilliant too," another voice chimed in. "Speaks 5 languages. Skilled in diplomacy. Exactly what the king needs in a queen." Each word was a knife in my chest, but I forced myself to listen, to understand what I was up against. "What about that Omega he was bonded to?" an older man asked. "The rejected one? Whatever happened to her?" "Sent away months ago," someone replied. "Good riddance, if you ask me. A king needs a proper mate, not some charity case." I pulled my cloak tighter and walked away before I did something I'd regret. The wedding was set for noon in the castle's grand courtyard, where the entire court and hundreds of guests could witness the ceremony. I arrived early, finding a spot in the back where I could see without being easily noticed. The courtyard filled quickly, alphas in formal dress, omegas in their finest clothes, betas representing various packs and territories. The air thrummed with excitement and power. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a political event that would shift the balance of power across multiple territories. I spotted Jonathan near the front, looking uncomfortable in formal attire. Susie was there too, along with a dozen other faces I recognized from my brief time at court. None of them had noticed me yet. Then the musicians began to play, and Princess Tracy Hoffman made her entrance. She was stunning, golden hair piled high, a dress that probably cost more than my parents' house, and a confidence that came from a lifetime of knowing she was valued. She walked down the aisle with perfect poise, smiling at the crowd. Everything I wasn't. The pain was crushing, but I forced myself to watch, forced myself to witness this. Then Ronaldo appeared, and my heart stopped. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, tension in every line of his body, and through the bond, even dampened as it was, I felt his misery. This wasn't a man excited to marry. This was a man going through the motions. But why? If he'd chosen Princess Tracy, if this was what he wanted, why did he look like he was walking to his own execution? The ceremony began. The officiant started speaking about bonds and duty and alliance. Princess Tracy smiled. The crowd watched with satisfaction. And Ronaldo looked empty. Then I heard it. A whisper at the edge of my hearing, growing louder. Confusion rippling through the crowd at the back. People turning to look at something behind me. I turned too, and my blood ran cold. Rogues. At least 20 of them, emerging from the forest at the courtyard's edge. But these weren't ordinary rogues. They moved with coordination, with purpose. This was planned. Assassins. Someone screamed. Chaos erupted. The rogues rushed forward, and I realized with horror that they were heading straight for Ronaldo. This wasn't random violence. This was an organized hit, timed for when the king would be surrounded by guests and distracted by ceremony. Guards moved to intercept, but the rogues were fast and skilled. One broke through the defensive line, heading straight for Ronaldo with a blade in hand. I didn't think. I ran. I shoved through the panicking crowd, pushed past alphas twice my size, and threw myself between the rogue and Ronaldo just as the blade came down. The blade caught me across the shoulder, and pain exploded through my body. I went down hard, blood pouring from the wound. Loop! Ronaldo's roar shook the courtyard. Through the bond, suddenly not dampened at all, suddenly blazing with full intensity, I felt his rage, his terror, his absolute certainty that he would destroy anything that hurt me. He shifted, but not into the wolf I'd seen dying in the river 10 months ago. This was something else, something more. The shift was violent, explosive, reality itself seeming to bend around him. His body expanded, bones cracking and reforming, until a massive wolf stood where the king had been. But this wolf was twice the size of any I'd ever seen, with fur that seemed to absorb light and eyes that glowed like molten gold. A true alpha. The alpha of alphas. The king in his true form. The entire courtyard went silent. Even the attacking rogues froze, confronted with a power that made their instincts scream at them to submit or die. Ronaldo's wolf moved faster than should have been possible for something that size. He tore through the assassins like they were paper, protecting the crowd even as he positioned himself between them and me. No hesitation. No holding back. This was what a king looked like when someone threatened his mate. More rogues poured from the forest. This had been better planned than anyone realized. 20 became 40 became 60, and even Ronaldo's incredible power had limits. Protect the princess, someone shouted. But Ronaldo's wolf ignored Princess Tracy entirely. He was focused on me, on keeping the rogues away from where I lay bleeding on the courtyard stones. Through the bond, now fully open, I felt everything. His love, his terror of losing me, his rage at himself for sending me away, for thinking he could live without me, for almost marrying someone else when his heart belonged to me completely. And I felt something else, the curse, ancient and powerful, watching this moment with hungry attention. Princess Tracy was screaming at guards to help the king, but no one was moving fast enough. A rogue broke through Ronaldo's defense, heading straight for me with claws extended. I couldn't move. The wound on my shoulder had left me weak, dizzy with blood loss, but I could still sing. I opened my mouth and let the melody pour out, not a lullaby this time, but something fierce and commanding, a battle song, a call to arms, and every wolf in the courtyard felt it. The song resonated with something primal in their blood, cutting through panic and confusion. Guards who'd been frozen suddenly moved with purpose. Alphas who'd been protecting themselves turned to defend others. Even the rogues hesitated, confused by the power in my voice. Ronaldo's wolf looked at me, and in his gold eyes I saw recognition, understanding. This was what I was meant to be. Not a traditional Omega who soothed and healed passively. An Omega who could command, who could inspire, who could turn the tide of battle with nothing but her voice. The curse understood it too. I felt it crack. Ancient magic recognizing that this moment of choice and sacrifice and power was what it had been waiting for. I'd chosen Ronaldo without obligation. I'd run into danger to save him. I'd shown my true strength not despite being Omega but because of it. The curse shattered. The sensation was like lightning through the bond. The artificial connection Ronaldo had created, burned away, replaced instantly by something natural and right and permanent. A true mate bond, forged in fire and blood and choice. Mine, Ronaldo's voice thundered through the bond. My mate, my Omega, mine. Yours, I sent back, even as my vision started to blur. Always yours. The battle ended quickly after that. With the curse broken and the true mate bond in place, Ronaldo's power doubled, tripled. He tore through the remaining rogues with terrifying efficiency, while guards secured the perimeter and healers rushed forward. When the last rogue fell, Ronaldo shifted back to human form and ran to me. Lupe, his hands were gentle despite their blood coating, checking my wound. Stay with me. Don't you dare leave me now. Not leaving, I managed. Just really hurts. I know. The healers are coming. Just hold on. His voice broke. I'm so sorry. I was such a fool. I should never have sent you away, should never have doubted what we had. You broke the curse. I interrupted, smiling despite the pain. Idiot. You broke the curse. We broke it, he corrected. Together, the way it was always supposed to be. Marilyn arrived, her hands already glowing with healing magic. Move aside, Your Majesty. Let me work. But Ronaldo wouldn't let go of my hand. I'm not leaving her. I wasn't suggesting you should, Marilyn said dryly, already working on my shoulder. The true mate bond is finally in place. Separating you two now would probably kill you both. The healing magic was warm and soothing, knitting flesh and bone back together. Through the bond, I felt Ronaldo's relief, his love, his absolute certainty that he would never let me go again. What about Princess Tracy? I asked weakly. What about her? Ronaldo's voice was flat. You were supposed to marry her today. I was never going to marry her. He leaned closer, pressing his forehead to mine. The wedding was fake, Lupe. A trap to draw out the assassins we knew were planning an attack. Tracy's not even really a princess, she's a trained warrior from the Eastern Territories, here to help us flush out the conspiracy. I stared at him. You… what? We've known for months that someone was planning to assassinate me at a public event. So we created a fake wedding that would draw every enemy out of hiding. Tracy volunteered to play the bride. He touched my face gently. But I never intended to actually marry her. There's only one person I want to mate with. And I was a fool to think I could wait a year for her. You could have told me, I said, torn between relief and fury. You were supposed to stay at the cottage. You were supposed to be safe. He kissed my forehead. When I felt you nearby 2 days ago through the bond, when I realized you'd come to the castle despite everything, Lupe, I nearly called off the entire plan. But I couldn't risk the assassins escaping. We had to see it through. So you let me think you were marrying someone else? I thought you were safely in the village, that you wouldn't see the ceremony. I was going to come find you immediately after, explain everything, beg you to forgive me. His eyes were pleading. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted you safe. Marilyn finished healing my shoulder and stepped back. She'll be fine. The wound was deep but clean. She'll need rest. But there's no permanent damage. Thank you, Ronaldo said, not taking his eyes off me. Marilyn smiled. Congratulations on your mating, Your Majesty, both of you. The true bond suits you. Only after she left did I realize the entire courtyard was watching us. Hundreds of witnesses to our reunion. To the revelation of the true mate bond. To everything. Jonathan pushed through the crowd. The rogues have been secured. We're interrogating survivors now. And, He glanced between Ronaldo and me. The court has some questions about what just happened. I'm sure they do, Ronaldo said, standing but keeping hold of my hand. He helped me to my feet, steadying me when I swayed. Let's address them. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. The wedding you came to witness today was not real. It was a tactical operation to expose and eliminate a threat to this court. Princess Tracy is not my intended mate, and never was. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My true mate is Lupe Pham, the woman who just saved my life. The woman who broke an ancient curse simply by being exactly who she is. He pulled me closer. The woman who, if she'll still have me after everything I've put her through, will be my queen. Every eye in the courtyard was on me, waiting for my response. Through the bond, I felt Ronaldo's vulnerability, his fear that I might still say no after months of separation and today's deception. I could have made him sweat. Could have drawn it out, made him work for forgiveness. But I'd spent 10 months away from him, and I was done with separation. Yes, I said clearly, I'll mate with you. Again, properly this time. The relief that flooded through him almost made me laugh. But, I added, you're going to spend the rest of your life making up for that year apart. Deal, he said immediately, pulling me into a kiss that made the crowd cheer. When we finally broke apart, he turned to address the court again. We'll have a proper ceremony in 1 week. A real one this time. And anyone who has a problem with my choice of mate can leave now. No one moved. Slowly, starting with Jonathan, the alphas in the crowd began to kneel. One by one, every wolf in the courtyard, alpha, beta, and omega alike, dropped to one knee in a gesture of respect and submission. Not to the king, to his queen. To me. I stood there, overwhelmed, while hundreds of powerful wolves acknowledged my place at Ronaldo's side. Acknowledged that I was worthy. That I belonged. And through the bond, I felt Ronaldo's fierce pride and love. Look at them, he sent. Look at what you've earned. Not because of me, but because of who you are. Our queen, Jonathan's voice rang out. All hail Queen Lupe. All hail Queen Lupe. The crowd echoed. I looked at Ronaldo, at the love in his eyes, and felt the true mate bond pulse with warmth and certainty in my chest. This was real. This was right. This was everything the universe had meant for us to have, and no curse, No separation. No doubt could ever take it away again. Epilogue. 3 months later. The true mating ceremony happened 1 week after the attack, just as Ronaldo had promised. It was nothing like the elaborate spectacle he'd staged with Princess Tracy. This was intimate, just the inner court, close allies, and a handful of guests I'd personally chosen. My parents came, my sister too, all of them tearful and proud and completely baffled by how their broken daughter had become a queen. Terence was not invited. The Clearwater Pack sent representatives anyway, clearly trying to curry favor with their new queen. I accepted their gifts with cold politeness, and made it clear that their pack's treatment of Omegas would need to change if they wanted to maintain good relations with the Northern Court. Susie attended, though she looked like she'd swallowed something sour, but she knelt with everyone else when I walked down the aisle, and through the bond I felt Ronaldo's amusement at her obvious discomfort. "Be nice," I sent to him. "I'm always nice," he replied, radiating innocence. "You're thinking about assigning her to inventory duty in the coldest storage room. You can't prove that." The ceremony itself was beautiful and simple. We stood before the court, hands clasped, while the officiant spoke about true mate bonds and destiny, and the strength that comes from choosing love, even when fate makes it difficult. When Ronaldo said his vows, promising to honor my choices, to value my voice, to stand beside me as an equal partner, his voice broke with emotion. Through the bond, I felt everything he couldn't put into words: his gratitude, his wonder, his absolute certainty that I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. My own vows were simpler. I choose you. I will always choose you. In this life and whatever comes after. The kiss that sealed our bond lasted long enough that Jonathan had to clear his throat pointedly to remind us we had an audience. The celebration afterward went until dawn, with wolves from across the territories drinking and dancing and celebrating the fact that their king had finally found his mate. I danced until my feet hurt, laughed until my sides ached, and felt more alive than I'd ever felt in my life. Later, much later, when the last guests had finally left and the castle grew quiet, Ronaldo carried me to our chambers, not his rooms or mine, but ours, newly prepared to accommodate both of us. "How are you feeling?" he asked, setting me gently on the massive bed. "Exhausted, happy, still a little angry with you about the fake wedding." "Still?" He sat beside me, pulling me into his arms. "I thought we'd moved past that." "Oh, we have. But I'm allowed to remind you occasionally that you're an idiot." I snuggled closer, breathing in his cedar and smoke scent. A well-meaning idiot, but still. Through the bond, I felt his amusement and love. Fair enough. I can live with that. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just enjoying being together without urgency or fear or separation hanging over us. "I've been thinking," I said eventually, "about what I want to do now. As queen." "You can do whatever you want," Ronaldo said immediately. "The role is yours to define. I want to change how we treat Omegas. Not just here, but across all territories under your rule." I pulled back to look at him. "I want to start schools for them, places where they can develop their gifts without being forced into traditional roles. I want to research the old Omega traditions and bring back the ones that actually honored what we are." His eyes lit up. "That's brilliant. And perfect for you. It'll be controversial. A lot of alphas won't like it. Then they'll have to adjust. You're their queen. What you say goes." He kissed my forehead. "Besides, after they saw what you did during the attack, how your voice commanded the entire courtyard, how you turned the tide of battle, they're terrified of you. In a good way. I'm not sure there's a good way to be terrified of your queen. There is when that queen is powerful enough to make them rethink everything they thought they knew about Omegas." He stood, pulling me up with him. "Come on. There's something I want to show you." He led me through the castle, down corridors I'd never explored, until we reached a set of doors I didn't recognize. "What is this?" "Your study," he said, pushing the doors open. "I had it prepared while you were at the cottage. I was hoping you'd come back and need a space that was entirely yours." The room beyond took my breath away. It was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the forest. One entire wall was lined with empty bookshelves, ready to be filled. A huge desk sat in the center, covered with fresh paper, pens, and writing supplies. Comfortable chairs were scattered throughout, perfect for reading or thinking or just existing. But what made me cry was the painting above the fireplace. It was me, sitting by a river at night, singing to a massive black wolf who watched me with gold eyes. The artist had captured the moment perfectly: the moonlight, the blood, the desperate hope in my expression, the recognition in the wolf's gaze. The moment we chose each other, even though we didn't fully understand it yet. When? I couldn't finish the sentence. I commissioned it the day after you left for the cottage, Ronaldo said quietly, coming to stand beside me. I needed something to remind me why I was doing this, why I had to let you go, even though it was killing me. His arm came around my waist. I'd stare at this painting every night and promise myself that if you came back, I'd give you everything. Every part of me. Every resource at my disposal. Everything I have would be yours. I turned in his arms, tears streaming down my face. You already gave me everything that matters. You saw me when everyone else looked through me. You valued me when I couldn't value myself. You let me go so I could choose you freely. I kissed him softly. That's more than everything. That's miraculous. Through the bond, his love wrapped around me like sunlight. So, he said after a moment, tell me about these Omega schools. What's your vision? And we stayed up until dawn talking about the future, about education and tradition, and the ways we could reshape the world for the better. About books to research and territories to visit, and Omegas who deserved to know they were powerful in their own right. About building something that would last long after we were gone. 3 months into my reign as queen, I received a letter that changed everything. It came from the Eastern Territories, from a small pack I'd never heard of. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. Your Majesty, my name is Danielle Shaw, and I'm writing to you because I've heard stories about what you did, how you were rejected and survived, how you became queen anyway, how you're changing laws to protect Omegas. I need your help. My sister is an Omega, but she's not like other Omegas. She has 3 forms: wolf, hawk, and something else we don't understand. The pack elders say she's cursed, that she needs to be cast out or worse. They say no one will ever want to mate with someone so unnatural. But I've heard you value Omegas who are different. Please, if there's any way you can help my sister, any protection you can offer. We're running out of time. I read the letter 3 times, my heart pounding. An Omega with 3 forms, rejected by her pack for being different. In danger. This was exactly what I'd been working toward, creating a system where Omegas like this girl could be protected, valued, celebrated for their unique gifts, instead of punished for them. I found Ronaldo in his office, buried in correspondence as usual. I need to travel to the Eastern Territories, I said without preamble. There's an Omega who needs our help. He looked up, and through the bond I felt his immediate concern. What kind of help? I handed him the letter. He read it quickly, his expression darkening. An Omega with 3 forms, he said slowly. That's extraordinarily rare. And dangerous. If she can't control the shifts. Which is exactly why she needs proper training, not exile or execution. I leaned on his desk. Ronaldo, this is what we talked about. This is why I wanted to start the Omega schools. If we don't protect wolves like her, who will? I agree completely. He stood, coming around the desk. But I'm coming with you. The Eastern Territories are unstable right now, and I won't have you traveling into potential danger without backup. I'm not helpless. I know. I've seen you command a battlefield with your voice. But you're also my mate. And I get to worry about you. He kissed me gently. Besides, this could be a good opportunity to meet with the Eastern Territory leaders about implementing the new Omega protection laws across their region. I smiled. You just want to be there when I tell pack elders they're idiots for rejecting powerful Omegas. That too, he admitted with a grin. Through the bond, I felt his pride in me, his excitement about this new phase of our work together. We weren't just king and queen ruling from a castle, we were partners actively reshaping the world. When do we leave? I asked. Tomorrow morning, I'll have Jonathan assemble a small escort. He pulled me close. And Lupe? Thank you. For what? For being exactly who you are. For caring about Omegas who are suffering. For using your position to help people instead of just enjoying the power. He touched my face gently. You're going to be an extraordinary queen. You already are. We're going to be extraordinary, I corrected. Together. Together, he agreed. That night, lying in bed with Ronaldo's arm around me, and the true mate bond humming peacefully in my chest, I thought about how far I'd come. A year ago, I'd been dying in a forest, singing to a wolf I didn't know, certain that my life was over. Now I was a queen with a mate who loved me unconditionally, with purpose and power and the ability to change lives for the better. The rejected Omega who couldn't shift had become someone who commanded alphas with her voice. The broken girl who'd been cast aside had become a woman who protected others from the same fate. And the dying wolf I'd saved? He'd saved me right back, in every way that mattered. Through the bond, I felt Ronaldo's contentment as he drifted towards sleep. "I love you," I sent. "I love you more," he replied drowsily. "My Omega, my queen, my everything." "Yours," I confirmed. "Always yours." And as I fell asleep in the arms of my true mate, I knew that this was just the beginning. The beginning of a reign that would change the world. The beginning of a love story that would be told for generations. The beginning of everything I'd never dared to hope for. But mostly, the beginning of a life where being different wasn't a curse, it was a gift. And that made all the pain, all the rejection, all the struggle worth it. Because I'd found my place. I'd found my voice. I'd found my home. And I was never, ever letting it go. And so we reached the end of Lupe and Ronaldo's journey from a dying Omega and a wounded king to partners who changed the world. But here's what I want to ask you. If you were Lupe, standing in that forest with bond rot eating away at you, would you have stopped to save a dying wolf? Or would you have kept walking, choosing your own survival over a stranger's suffering? Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion create the biggest revolutions. If this story moved you, please leave a like, it helps others find their way to stories like this. And drop a comment below. What would you have done in Lupe's position that night in the river? Until next time, remember, being different isn't a curse. It's just power the world hasn't learned to recognize yet.